The Evolving Canvas, From Rebellion to Recognition. The story of street art begins not in pristine galleries, but in the gritty, pulsating arteries of the modern city, on the grimy sides of subway cars and the forgotten brick walls of industrial neighborhoods. Its earliest incarnation, graffiti, was an explosion of raw, untamed expression, a primal scream for visibility in an urban landscape that often rendered its inhabitants anonymous. In the late 1960s and 70s, cities like Philadelphia and New York became the proving grounds for this new phenomenon. Pioneers like Cornbread in Philly and Talkie 183 in New York weren't thinking about art history. They were driven by a desire for fame and presence. Their tags, stylized signatures, were a way of saying, "I exist." This was an act of rebellion, a direct challenge to the concepts of private property and public order. To the authorities and much of the public, it was nothing more than vandalism, a symptom of urban decay. The medium was the spray can, the canvas was the city itself, and the goal was ubiquity. Subway trains became moving galleries, canvases that carried a writer's name from the Bronx to Brooklyn, a rolling testament to their audacity and reach. This initial phase was competitive and territorial, a complex subculture with its own rules, hierarchies, and lexicon. It was about getting your name up, bigger and bolder than the next person, in the most daring locations possible. But within this chaotic burst of lettering, the seeds of a profound artistic evolution were being sown. Writers began to develop more complex styles, moving from simple tags to elaborate pieces with intricate lettering, 3D effects, vibrant color schemes, and characters. This was the moment the conversation began to shift from pure vandalism to a form of folk art with its own aesthetic principles. The raw energy of the streets started to attract individuals who saw not just an opportunity for fame, but for genuine artistic expression. Figures like Jean-Michel Basquiat, under the tag Samo, and Keith Haring used the city as their sketchbook, bridging the chasm between the illicit world of graffiti and the formal art establishment. They demonstrated that the same energy and immediacy that defined a subway piece could be channeled into work that resonated with a much broader audience, challenging the very definition of where art belongs. This transition was crucial. It began to legitimize the street as a viable and powerful place for art to live. The perception slowly started to change from defacement to a dynamic, if unsanctioned, form of public art. The canvas was evolving, and so were the tools and techniques. The shift from rebellion to recognition was accelerated by an incredible diversification of form. Street art broke free from the singular identity of spray-painted graffiti and blossomed into a multifaceted movement. Stencil art, famously popularized by artists like Blek-Lerotte in France and later Banksy in the UK, offered a new level of detail and reproducibility. Stencils allowed for complex images to be executed quickly, a crucial advantage when working illegally. This technique also lent itself to sharp political commentary, creating iconic images that could be easily shared and recognized. Alongside stencils, wheat pasting, or paste-ups, became another popular method. Artists could create detailed illustrations or posters on paper in their studio and then apply them to walls with adhesive, minimizing their time on the street while maximizing visual impact. This opened the door for artists with backgrounds in drawing and graphic design to enter the public sphere. The movement became even more inclusive with the advent of things like yarn bombing, where knitters and crocheters cover public objects like statues, benches, and trees in colorful fiber art, adding a soft, whimsical, and distinctly non-destructive touch to the urban environment. Artists also began creating complex three-dimensional installations, using found objects or custom-built sculptures to interact with the city in surprising ways. This explosion of techniques meant that street art was no longer a monolith. It was a vibrant ecosystem of different styles and approaches. The urban landscape was being transformed into a sprawling, accessible art gallery for everyone, free of charge and open 24/7. This growing artistic legitimacy, combined with the rise of the internet allowing images of the work to be shared globally, created a groundswell of public appreciation. Cities that once spent millions buffing out graffiti began to see the value in commissioning large-scale murals, recognizing their power to beautify neighborhoods and attract visitors. The outlaw had become the celebrated visionary. Block 2. Art as dialogue. Reclaiming public narratives. As street art gained artistic legitimacy, its function evolved beyond personal expression and aesthetic enhancement. It became one of the most powerful and democratic mediums for public discourse in the modern world. Unlike art confined to galleries or museums, which often comes with physical and cultural barriers to entry, street art is undeniably public. It exists in the spaces where people live, work, and commute. It interrupts the daily routine, demanding attention and forcing a moment of reflection. This accessibility is its superpower. By occupying public walls, artists bypass the traditional gatekeepers of the art world, the curators, the critics, the collectors, and speak directly to the people. This creates a direct line of communication, a platform for voices that are frequently marginalized or completely absent from mainstream media and official public monuments. The wall of a building becomes a billboard for the voiceless, a canvas where untold stories and inconvenient truths can be displayed for all to see. It's a way of reclaiming the visual narrative of a city, challenging the endless barrage of commercial advertising and sterile corporate architecture with something deeply human, personal, and often provocative. An artist can paint a mural that celebrates a local hero forgotten by the history books, or one that exposes a social injustice that the powerful would rather ignore. In doing so, they don't just add color to a wall, they add a new layer of meaning to the space itself. This function is most potent when street art serves as a tool for political protest and social commentary. Throughout history and across the globe, walls have become battlegrounds for ideas. Think of the political murals of Northern Ireland, the peace walls in Belfast that narrate decades of conflict and aspirations for peace from both loyalist and Republican perspectives. These murals are not just decorations, they are living historical documents, community statements that define identity and articulate political grievances. In more recent times, street art was a vital component of the Arab Spring, with stencils of martyrs and revolutionary slogans appearing overnight on walls in Cairo and Tunis, serving as a defiant visual chorus for the uprising. Similarly, the Black Lives Matter movement has seen an explosion of public art, with artists creating powerful portraits of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others, transforming public spaces into sites of memorial and protest. A single powerful image on a wall can become an iconic symbol for an entire movement, galvanizing communities and keeping critical conversations in the public eye long after the news cycle has moved on. Artists like the French photographer J.R., with his global Inside Out project, empower entire communities to paste enormous portraits of themselves in their own neighborhoods, challenging perceptions and asserting their presence and humanity. This is visual activism in its purest form, using art to compel passersby to engage with complex issues, sparking dialogue and debate on the streets, in coffee shops, and online. Beyond overt political protest, street art is instrumental in preserving local histories and strengthening community identity. In a world of increasing globalization and urban homogenization, where every city center risks looking the same, street art can anchor a neighborhood in its unique cultural heritage. Murals often depict scenes from a community's past, celebrate its diverse inhabitants, or tell folkloric stories that have been passed down through generations. In cities across Latin America, for example, muralism has a long and proud tradition of reflecting indigenous cultures and revolutionary histories, creating a powerful sense of shared identity and pride. By painting these narratives on the walls, artists ensure that they are not lost or paved over by new development. They create landmarks that are meaningful to the people who live there, turning a simple corner store or a bridge underpass into a repository of collective memory. These murals act as open-air museums, preserving stories that might otherwise be forgotten. This act of reclaiming space is also an act of empowerment. When a community sees its own faces and its own stories celebrated on a grand scale, it reinforces a sense of belonging and ownership over their environment. It sends a clear message: this is our home, we are here, our stories matter. This can be a powerful antidote to the feelings of disenfranchisement that can permeate in rapidly changing urban areas. The art becomes a source of solidarity, a visual representation of the community's soul, actively shaping the collective consciousness of the city one wall at a time, and ensuring that the narrative of a place is written not just by developers and politicians, but by the people who call it home. Block 3. The double-edged brush. Revitalization and gentrification. The transformation of street art from a clandestine act to a celebrated cultural force has had profound and complex socioeconomic consequences for our cities. On one hand, it is frequently championed as a powerful catalyst for urban revitalization. In countless instances, a concerted effort to bring art to the streets has breathed new life into neglected, post-industrial neighborhoods. Areas once defined by vacant storefronts and crumbling infrastructure have been reborn as vibrant cultural districts, drawing in new energy and investment. The most famous example is arguably the Wynwood Walls in Miami. What was once a collection of derelict warehouses was transformed into the world's largest outdoor art gallery, attracting millions of tourists annually. This influx of visitors supports a thriving ecosystem of cafes, galleries, and local businesses, creating jobs and generating revenue. This process, often called creative placemaking, leverages the power of the arts to improve the social and economic fabric of a community. Large-scale murals can instill a profound sense of civic pride, turning previously overlooked areas into destinations. They can improve public safety by activating public spaces and encouraging more pedestrian traffic. For residents, seeing their neighborhood transformed through beautiful, meaningful art can foster a stronger sense of community and belonging. The art becomes a shared asset, a point of collective pride that strengthens social bonds. From the East Side Gallery on the remnants of the Berlin Wall to the vibrant alleys of Melbourne, this story has been repeated. Art arrives, and with it comes renewed interest, investment, and life. However, this seemingly positive transformation hides a much more complicated reality. The very same forces that make street art a tool for revitalization can also make it an engine of gentrification, a phenomenon sometimes referred to as art washing. The process follows a predictable and often heartbreaking pattern. Artists, often seeking affordable live workspaces, move into low-income, neglected neighborhoods. They begin to beautify the area, painting murals and creating a vibrant, edgy cultural scene. This newfound coolness and aesthetic appeal starts to attract attention. The neighborhood becomes a trendy spot, featured in magazines and on social media. This is the tipping point. Real estate developers and speculators take notice of the area's rising cultural capital and see a lucrative opportunity. They begin buying up property, renovating buildings, and marketing the neighborhood's authentic artistic vibe to a wealthier clientele. As new high-end businesses and luxury condos move in, property values and rents begin to skyrocket. This is the double-edged nature of the brush. The art that once celebrated the local community now serves as a marketing tool to displace it. The art that once gave a voice to the voiceless now attracts a new population that pushes them out. Long-term residents, small family-owned businesses, and often the original artists themselves are priced out of the very neighborhood they helped make desirable. This places artists and arts organizations in a significant ethical bind. Are they unwitting pawns in the gentrification machine, or are they active participants? Many artists are deeply committed to social justice and community empowerment, yet their work can inadvertently pave the way for the displacement of the communities they aim to support. This dilemma has led to a growing awareness and a search for more equitable models of creative placemaking. Activists and community leaders are pushing back against top-down art-washing projects initiated by developers. Instead, they champion community-led initiatives where residents have direct control over the public art in their neighborhood. These projects often prioritize hiring local artists, ensuring the themes and stories are authentic to the community, and, most importantly, are sometimes paired with policy initiatives like rent control or community land trusts to protect existing residents from displacement. Some artists are now using their work to explicitly protest gentrification, creating murals that critique the very processes of development and displacement happening around them. The wall becomes a site of resistance against the economic forces reshaping the neighborhood. The future of urban art lies in navigating this complex terrain. The challenge is to harness its incredible power to revitalize and beautify without destroying the soul and diversity of the communities it inhabits. It requires a conscious effort to ensure that the benefits of a more colorful city are shared by everyone, not just those who can afford the rising price of admission. The conversation is no longer just about what is on the walls, but about who has the right to the city itself.